An occasional blogger, he also regularly shares his experiences and learns skills in project management, enterprise application, and communication through workshops and seminars at local colleges and institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Rahul Joshi.
In entrepreneurship, failure is an option in whatever you do. But how many times does one make a choice to choose that option? And what does that really mean? A deliberate attempt to fail at something which does not make a whole lot of sense? Or you happen to land on one, in which case you didn't know beforehand. So this is me when I was 9 months old. And despite the look on my face of a deer caught in a headlight, I had a relatively happy childhood. I completed my basic education, came from a middle-class family, went to school, graduated, went overseas for my higher studies, found a job. Very decent performer at work, nothing extraordinary, climbed through the corporate ladder into some senior positions, and was doing very well for myself. And by the time I realized that just over a decade had passed since my first job, and something happened at that point. I started waking up at the dreaded 4 a.m. hour. And you know one thing about 4 a.m., if you wake up at 4 a.m. for any reason, whether it's your health or worries, you need to pay attention to that. In my case, it was questions that were talking to me about what's the path I am on? Have I defined what I needed to achieve? Is this really the right track? And what do I need to do? But the flow didn't stop there. The questions kept on coming. I thought it might be a midlife crisis, maybe that I hit a little early. I started looking at my friends and family to see if they were in a similar boat. And if I had to change, what was that change look like? What does that mean? By then, I had a family, kids. I have to worry about their education. I had to do something to find out. And the only thing I could think of at that time was to take a flight back home. And that is putting it very mildly. But in reality, I was doing something more. I had started on a path to begin fresh, to start on an entirely new thing, and trying to define some goals for me and then finding answers to it. But of course, it was easier said than done because I convinced my family to go along with me. And we landed ourselves into a completely new thing, a new environment. The place I live, the work, the people I interact with, the people I do business with. Everything was new. To say the least, it was not a very smooth landing. But then, by the time I had boiled it down to these 4 things that I thought I wanted to do. I wanted to do something new related to the profession, but that I have not done before. I wanted to find out, is there something more to me? Maybe just a skill, a hobby, something I may develop a liking to. And then, was this just a passing thought? Can I get behind a venture? Can I really see it through? Can I handle this? And then the biggest of it all was, is it worth it? How will I know it's worth it? When will I know it? And what does worth really mean? So starting from that day on until today, it has been a journey that is revealing answers to these questions in some small way at each day. So I started on a venture building software for the domestic legal market here in India. It was a niche area where we thought the technology had not made much inroads into, so something we could look at. The domain was new. The people that I wanted to, the target audience that I worked there was new. There was no historical data in this market as compared to other industries where you could compare. As far as functional expertise was concerned, I had little to no expertise. And then talking about marketing and advertising, how do I even start? So starting with the most common thread that I had from my past life, which was building software, I got coupled together with a few partners, and we started building this product. One SMS, one email, one phone call at a time. I had never presented in a marketing capacity to an audience. My first presentation selling the product was in a room full of people who were transiting. I had to catch their attention by the time they moved from one end of the room to the other end of the room. Later, I only came to know that this will be the norm everywhere else I go, just because of the target audience I'm dealing with. This is my marketing booth. This is a marketing booth I set up with just a banner in a parking lot where I stood all day for a month waiting patiently to talk to anyone who was willing to listen to what we had to offer. But then, after a few months, we started receiving a message, a phone call, who appreciated the product we built, who wanted something new, more features added in there. I even had one time a customer who found out where I live, knocked on my door late in the evening, and wanted to pay a small subscription fee to the service I was going to start. But in the process, it answered me my first question that I want to, is if whatever I did in this as part of this initiative, I would have never done just thinking of it 2 years ago. But it was an eye-opener to me that if you decide to, you can apply yourself and make a change. Now, the reality of doing a business and getting satisfaction from it can sometimes drift apart. In this case, because of the realities of the market, the resource crunch, financial issues, our operation went into a very slow mode. Eventually, we laid off a lot of staff and significantly reduced our operations, and eventually set itself on a path to die. This turbulence was quite extreme. But this was the goal that I started with when I came back. I had imagined myself working on this for next 10 to 20 years, scaling it, building an enterprise, all of it just to see now come to the end of the road so soon. Emotions were flying thick and high. I felt rejected by the situation I was in, rejected by the market, rejected by the people around me. I was fearful of what's next to come. If I look back in the rear view mirror, I liked where I came from, where it meant a daily routine, a little bit more predictable environment that was now looking more attractive again. And I was angry at anything and everything I could lay my hands on, blaming everything, eventually blaming myself. What did I do wrong? What else could I have done better? And what is it that I need to do now? I had to get over this, that I was not able to do so for a long time. I started reading self-help books, management books, books that could relate to my situation where I could find some comfort. And after a while, that didn't help. Until one fine day, I opened up my own blog account and wrote a post. My first post was just describing about the product that we had built and some information around it. And starting with the second and third, I started writing about the issues we faced, the decisions we took, everyday dilemmas that we faced running a business, and what we did there or what we didn't do there. Just putting it out there in the world and sharing it, knowing well enough there probably is no reader at the other end, was immensely satisfying. It gave me, not only did it help me clear out these thoughts that I had or these emotions that I had to get through, but it allowed me to clearly articulate my opinions, my views, even when I was going to think about what I want to do in the future. To me, this answered my second question of, is there something new to me? And I had found myself just by accident, that I have some liking to writing, that I could possibly further carry on and build on it. But then, what now? I went past the failure, that's done. I got this out of my system. What do I do now? Just then, through a network of friends, I happened to meet an artist who builds these beautiful sculptures and handiwork and handicraft work out of a special type of clay. He has been doing this for 12 years, and he was the only person I knew who went to school, one of the very few schools around, to learn this art. After talking to him, I realized he was working in an industry where it's a dying art, and he was generating some employment in the rural areas. He also wanted to promote his own art, and by the way, also make, of course, a living out of it as well. So that's when, along with a friend of mine and I, decided to set up a business, an online business, selling his artwork. I never learned in the 3 months that I've never learned about clay that as much I learned in 3 months that I did in the last 30 years. It was just not about socializing it, not just about giving it an international exposure, but actually giving it a revenue stream so that he can continue to build this industry, continue to employ the people in the rural areas that he was working on. This was way out of my league. I had built software. I probably, and at least theoretically, knew how to sell software, but I had never done something selling in handicraft. What does that mean? How do I even go there? But this got me past something that whether I can handle this question. It's still a work in progress, but it is no longer a passing thought. It has gone beyond that. Now I could see myself taking this through further and committing myself to a certain cause. And so at each stage of these initiatives, or each stage as I faced through these issues, the question I had to always ask myself was, is it worth it? Is it about monetary gains? If that was the case, then I would have never made that flight back home. When I wrote, after I wrote a few posts, one morning I got an email that somebody had liked it and was following my blog. For a moment I thought it was my friend who I paid for his dinner the other night. But it was pleasantly surprised as it was somebody else that I didn't know. Statistically, it didn't mean anything. But the fact that somebody took time to read it and the idea resonated with at least one person was motivation enough to continue to work towards it. So was it with the first sale that I did through our online site. So was it with the first critic who took time, who spent the effort and the time to try out what we had to build, what we had to offer, and took time to give some comments about it and what he liked and what he didn't like. So it was with the first person who voluntarily shared or retweeted or talked about the product we had to offer. Ultimately, this was about connections, making connections with new people, associating yourself with new cause, having conversations, and understanding perspectives. It was about contribution to however small it may be, to work with the people that you work with in the society that you live in. Right? As one of my favorite authors, Seth Godin, to paraphrase his message, he says, it's about creating art, shipping it, and keeping the lizard brain at bay. It was about that. So if I look back before I started having these questions, this is the picture I had in mind. This is the best thing that would depict what I had in mind. Family situations, social pressures, it's not for me mindset, all kept telling me that there is only one way to turn. There is only one way to go. You cannot change the lane. But in fact, even then and today, even now, there were a lot of options. You could turn either whichever way you want, whichever you were interested in. And so what needed to do was take that first step towards your dream, towards your goal, towards what you want to explore. In my case, it was that flight back home that I took. So ultimately, then, what is it worth it, right? To me, the worth was in smaller things. Worth was in volunteering at local schools, at colleges, helping share my skill sets or my experiences. It was participating in smaller initiatives, challenging yourself in smaller initiatives. It was about It was about learning, not being an expert in everything and anything, but it was about learning in bits and pieces. But it allowed me to gain the experiences in volumes. And so, I come here with only a few messages. First is, do not box yourself in early on in life on what you can and cannot do. It's never too late. Always leave at least one window open to try something new. Discover yourself, or at least allow yourself to discover. I found it through entrepreneurship. You may find it through something else. But as long as we remember, failure is just a stop on your journey, and there is a beautiful viewpoint waiting for you on the horizon, it begs of you to take that first step. And so I leave you. Everyone has a fable or a story that they derive a moral from. In spirit of this conference, in spirit of this theme today, I leave you with a favorite song of mine that hopefully you can derive some motivation from. Thank you.